doing? Today I'm here because I want to talk about a topic that I think we can all relate to, and it's darkness. For me, it's actually especially important to talk about this these days because I was born in Venezuela. Although I don't live there for 28 years, and I left way before all this terrible things started happening in our beautiful country, I still feel that once you're born in Venezuela, you're always from Venezuela. And I wanted to address this topic also because in my coaching career, I confront a lot of people with this issue of feeling in a dark pit, of feeling helpless, of feeling that a darkness has taken over their life. So these are terminologies that probably you've heard in many instances. So I wanna refer to this issue of darkness I wanna tap into that topic in many ways. So the first way, let's go into the biblical times. Probably you've all heard about Egypt and the plagues, how Egyptians enslaved the Jews, and 10 plagues befell upon Egypt. And the 9th of the 10th plague was called darkness. And it's written in the Bible, very interesting, that darkness wasn't just like the darkness we know, that there's no light, but it was so thick that you can actually touch it. And not only you could touch it, but you would be completely paralyzed. Like Egyptians could not move out of the place they were at when the plague attacked. So this is a very interesting way of saying it, because actually I think also in psychology, when we refer to as darkness, actually psychologists address depression as a darkness, and also not only depression as a darkness, but also as a paralyzing darkness. So what happens with patients who are suffering from depression, or people that are actually attacked by depression, it's actually that feeling of paralyzed, of helplessness, of not being able to move, right? So it's because that feeling keeps you in bed and you can't work and you can't think and you can't do anything because actually all your vitality left you. Which is something interesting, because many people think that being depressed is being sad and being happy is being always smiley and singing and dancing. And it's really not true, because you could be depressed and function 100%. It has happened to me. And you can be completely happy and not even smile. You're just happy, you're content. So it's very important to differentiate between sadness and depression, and happiness and being all jolly and dancing, which doesn't contradict, but it's not necessarily that. So depression is really a lack of vitality that paralyzes you. Now, the problem with depression, let's for a second, depression can happen for many reasons. You know, it's a very personal thing. Let's not talk about the hereditary part, because that's really more into the clinical depression, and that I'm not going to go into it, and it's not my field, so I can't do it. But let's talk about the depression that has stricken all of us at one point or another, whether for an hour, for a day, or for 20 years. It doesn't matter. I think we've all been through a period in our lives that were so heavy and you know, a lack of vitality, like I said before, a lack of motivation, a lack of zest, right, of drive to do things. So the problem is not the depression itself, it's actually that feeling of paralyzed, that feeling of helplessness. And I think although it could happen for many reasons, it could happen because of a breakup, a divorce, loss of a job, loss of finances, a bad investment, loss of a home, you know, like many things. Actually, shame can lead to depression, right? We did something wrong and we feel so terribly ashamed, and we don't know how to fix it, how to repair it, that we go into this depression, which in that case would be a mechanism of defense. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, whenever you're feeling that depression and feeling paralyzed and feeling like you can't move out of there, it's a very dark place. And I think also mystics have referred to it as the dark night of the soul, right? When a person feels completely taken by this feeling, by this pit, by this coldness and loneliness, right? The main thing is that you feel lonely. And you feel you can't move because you don't feel that anyone cares, that anyone can relate to you. It's a very, I would say, even dangerous place to be. So why am I talking about this? And I mentioned in the beginning that I'm from Venezuela. I don't know if you hear the news, you don't hear the news if you follow, but Venezuela has gone through a very hard week last week where there was a complete blackout in most of the country, no electricity, no water. People literally died. Babies died, mothers died, birthing mothers died, elderly people died, children died. Let's not talk about people dying from hunger, which is like, to me, coming from a place where it's the richest country in South America, or at least it was. It's just such it's nonsense. I cannot believe that this is what this amazing country is going through. But interesting enough, you know, the way I see it, and that's why I'm doing this video, is because a lot of times we forget that what we see in the world, in the physical world, it's not just what we see. It's not just what's happening now in this 24 hours. Everything that happens in the world, it's happening also in the spiritual worlds. So in this case, I think the darkness that Venezuela experienced is just actually the expression of the darkness that it has been experiencing for the past 20 years. It's nothing more but the expression of it. So in the way I see it, and I know it's extremely hard to say it from a faraway country and to dare even try and relate to what people are going through, I can only imagine, and even my imagination doesn't go that far, of how much pain and how much helplessness and how much anger there must be, you know, because if I feel it from so far away, I can only imagine what people living in the country feel, which is family and dear friends and people that I know in my community and rabbis. And I can only imagine, like I said. But one of the things that I see is that once it gets revealed, now we have to deal with it, because now it's almost like bringing something from the subconscious to the conscious. So now the darkness was actually felt. The darkness was expressed. Now we have to go out of it. Now we have to really try and step out of it. And of course, telling someone that it's in such dark place, to tell them you gotta search for the light, it's like nonsense, right? You cannot tell someone that's desperate, don't be desperate, especially if you're not feeling what they're feeling. So I feel even, I feel a little small when I'm talking about this, because who am I, right? Who am I to say these things? But I can only really relate to it in a place of spirituality. And if I have any message to give all of you that still live in Venezuela, and all of you that are connected to Venezuela just like me, is knowing that when things get expressed, now they're on their way out. So now that we've felt what it is to be dark, we felt the darkness, we felt the evil, how evil, when it takes over, it's just overwhelmingly dark, right, in that place. So I'm not going to tell you, listen, all you have to do is get out of it, put a smile and have a happy thought and just think positive, because things are going to be better just before dawn, you know, like before sunrise comes the darkest night. Yes, I can tell you all this. These are all cliches, and these are all beautiful quotes that it won't help for the situation. What I'm here to say is that don't fall into the dangerous place of darkness. And this all of us can do, no matter where we're standing. The danger of darkness, it's not the feeling. It's not the feeling of being paralyzed. It's not the thickness of the darkness. It's not even what caused it. The danger of darkness is that we can get used to it and confuse it with light. Because when you go into a dark room and you don't see a thing, after a few seconds, our eyes start getting used to the dark. And after a few hours, you already see in the dark. And after more hours, you actually can live with the darkness because you already got used to it. That is the danger, to get used to the darkness. And I'm talking to people in Venezuela, and I'm talking to people with depression, and I'm talking with people in toxic relationships, and I'm talking to people who feel any kind of darkness in their lives. Do not allow yourself to get used to it. And that's the only way to fight it. You cannot fight darkness with a stick. You cannot kill darkness. You cannot cry darkness. You cannot do any, but you cannot do any of these things to fight it. But you can add light. And if you don't have physical light because you're taken over an evil force, you have the light in your soul. I know it sounds very beautiful, and I know it sounds very mystical and very, very inspiring and very easy to say from this side of the world. But seriously, that darkness, That darkness is just to show you how much light you have. And the light you have is inside of you. And the what's inside of you really is not giving up. It's fighting for that vitality. It's fighting one more time. I heard a beautiful quote from Rebbetzin Horowitz. She's going through a very hard time with her husband with ALS, Rabbi Yitzi. I'm sure, you know, many of you have heard of him, or if you haven't, definitely. It's a story worth listening to. But she said something beautiful. She said, being strong doesn't usually feel like being strong. Being strong feels that you're about to fall apart, and you don't fall apart, and you keep doing what you're supposed to because you know this is what you have to be doing. And if anything I can tell you, my dear Venezuelan compadres, comadres, my friends, my beloved, if anything I can tell you, it's please, 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 don't break. Don't break. Keep the faith. Keep believing. This is going to happen. You're going to come out of it. And the same I'm telling to all of you with depression, with the loss, with sadness. Please don't let it affect you to the point where you lose hope. Hope is the last thing we can lose. We can't. We have to be strong. And this is what we're made of. You know, I always say, you know, when we break is when the light can come in, because just through the cracks, the light go in. So I advise you, I beg you, please, please, please don't give up your faith. Being strong doesn't feel like being strong, but keep being strong anyways. And let this sadness and this darkness and this desperation become bitterness to the point that you're not giving up. Okay? So I wish you all, people in Venezuela, more light than you ever saw in your personal lives and in the collective lives. And any of you listening to me, if you can take anything from what I'm saying, is knowing that you have the power within. You wouldn't have been tested with this were it not for the really amazing strength you have inside of you. And I know right now it doesn't feel like it. And I know right now it feels like that darkness is never going to go away. And I know that it's not easy to hear it. And I know it's not easy to really internalize it, especially when you're going through such a hard time. But believe me, if I can only tell you, you're strong and you're made of amazing light. The light is within. So tap into that. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. And please God, we should meet only in light. So shine your light so others can shine their light too. All the best and bye-bye.